This is CBC Nova Scotia News.
Tonight, intimate partner violence. A look at the rising number of cases in the province.
Seeking closure, CBRM's police chief vows to find the body of missing man Justin McDonald.
And immigration numbers. CBC takes a closer look at who is moving to Nova Scotia.
Light snow, flurries mixed with freezing drizzle and even some showers overnight and into Friday with gusty winds. A quieter weekend in store. Your full forecast is coming up.
Good evening. RCMP have confirmed 2 recent deaths in Mahone Bay are a result of intimate partner violence. And that brings the total number of cases to 5 since October.
The rise in intimate partner violence homicides is prompting a coalition of advocates, survivors, and frontline workers to speak out. Nicola Sagan reports.
This latest death marks the 5th woman in Nova Scotia to be killed by her male partner, who then killed himself since October. RCMP confirmed this morning that the deaths of a 75-year-old man and 60-year-old woman in Mahone Bay were the result of intimate partner violence, adding to an ever-growing list of tragedy.
The recent events that have taken place in our province are deeply alarming.
In October, Brenda Tatlock-Burke was killed by her partner in Enfield. In November, a 49-year-old woman was killed in Yarmouth. A week later, a 71-year-old woman was killed in Cole Harbour. Then, on New Year's Eve, Coralie Smith and her father, Bradford Downey, were shot by her partner on Gottingen Street in Halifax. The suspects in all of these killings then took their own lives as well. This spike in deadly violence is pushing advocates and survivors to act, speaking out today as a coalition with an open letter to government.
Our letter was another call, open and transparent, to the new Ministers of Status of Women and Minister of Justice, asking for an urgent meeting.
The letter, signed by 14 women in the gender-based violence sector, demanding urgent action and the ear of Premier Tim Houston.
We are not in relationship with the Premier or these ministers. They continue to put a barrier between us and the decision makers, and we're not seeing any tangible action happening.
In September, the Houston government passed legislation to declare domestic violence an epidemic in the province. There is also a committee reporting on the progress towards the recommendations of the Mass Casualty Commission, which found the Portapique mass shooting began with intimate partner violence. But the coalition of advocates say this is symbolic.
We can't wait for another tragedy to act, so we need to act now.
So this is something that we have already prioritized and we are already working on, but make no mistake, there is much more to be done.
Drouin says she will be meeting with the group of advocates, though she doesn't have a date yet, and she couldn't say if Premier Tim Houston will be there as well. Nicola Sagan, CBC News, Halifax.
Police in Cape Breton remain tight-lipped about the disappearance of Justin McDonald. They held a news conference in Sydney today, and as the CBC's Kyle Moore reports, the chief of police says he's confident investigators will find McDonald's body.
I ask that if there's anyone in the public who has any information in relation to this matter, please come forward.
For the first time, Chief Robert Walsh spoke publicly about Justin McDonald, who police believe was murdered.
This was not a random act of violence. This was an isolated incident involving individuals who were connected to one another.
Police say they have searched more than 50 locations in the CBRM using drones and K9 units and have interviewed hundreds of people, but still they don't have what they're looking for.
We have not yet recovered Justin's body. And so we are committed that we will continue this investigation until we do.
Police have charged one person with manslaughter and robbery. 2 other men have also been charged with second-degree murder, robbery, and assault. Police say their investigation is continuing and more people may face charges.
The robbery and the homicide investigation are connected.
Inspector Joe Farrell wouldn't say how the two incidents are connected, but that a firearm was involved, and that it didn't take long for police to rule McDonald's disappearance as a homicide.
It was very early on that we received information that it was considered a homicide, and throughout the investigation, we just took the time, provided follow-up interviews, and accumulated evidence to prove those charges.
McDonald has been missing since July. For his family, the toll of not knowing where Justin is has been hard.
You got kids?
Yep.
Yeah. Do you ever take them to a shopping centre and all of a sudden they get lost in the clothes for 5 minutes and you don't know when the panic comes in? Yep. Well, keep that feeling, keep that in your body, and it doesn't go away.
Ken McDonald says the police have done their job, but the family needs to find Justin's body for closure.
If the chief says they're confident that we're going to find him, I'll take his words 100% because I'm confident we're going to find him. I really am. I believe it in my heart. You know, I believe it, and he has to be found.
Kyle Moore, CBC News, Sydney.
A teenager who witnessed the deadly attack in a parking garage at the Halifax shopping centre last April testified for a second day today at the trial of one of the 4 people accused of killing Ahmad Al-Marak. The witness is a friend of Al-Marak and one of the people he asked to accompany him that day when he went to the mall parkade for a fight. Al-Marak was swarmed by 4 people who punched and kicked him before one of them plunged a knife into his chest. The witness said he and the rest of Al-Marak's friends were unarmed, and so they didn't get involved when confronted.
Power was recently restored to many parts of northern Cape Breton after a massive snowstorm this past weekend. Nova Scotia power crews remain in the area, reconnecting about 100 customers. NSP says with ice and snow on trees and power lines, crews are knocking snow off and trimming branches. The utility also says getting around in northern Cape Breton has been challenging due to the snow-covered roads. The area got more than 60 centimeters of snow since Sunday.
And Ryan with us now. No doubt, lots of snow in parts of Cape Breton.
Yes, and a bit more to come.
And a bit more to come. Not done yet for Inverness County. And again, that has been hampering the crews as well with more snow falling, albeit not nearly as heavy as it was over the weekend and into the early stages of this week. Have a look at our tracker here, and you can see the snow that continues to come in as this feed of moisture continues to come in from the north. Now, it will start to ease as we roll through tonight into tomorrow. The northeast, though, will continue to see some onshore flurries and some light accumulation throughout the day tomorrow. Another 2 to 5 centimeters on top of the 2 to 5 centimeters tonight. Inverness County included there as well. Tomorrow, though, with temperatures a little bit milder, we'll see the potential for some freezing drizzle mixing in the northeast and that chance for some showers in through the south as well. Have a look at the snowfall outlook here. And again, we are looking at overnight tonight, 2 to 5 centimeters possible in the higher terrain areas in through the valley region. And then Colchester, Cumberland, the Northumberland shore, we'll see some pockets that may push up towards 5 to 10 centimeters, especially over higher terrain areas in the highlands. The weekend, though, looking quieter, and we'll talk about that with your 7-day forecast coming up.
That'll be welcome.
Sounding good. Okay, thanks so much, Ryan.
Thank you.
Well, recently released numbers from Statistics Canada are giving us a better sense of how many people are moving to this province and where they're coming from. This comes at a time when politicians at the provincial and federal levels are having heated discussions about immigration. Shayna Luck breaks down the numbers.
Many Nova Scotians will remember how, around 2021, it suddenly seemed like everyone from Ontario was moving to this province. Spoiler alert, that's not the case anymore. It's true, over the last 4 years, Nova Scotia absorbed an incredible 45,000 people from Ontario and thousands more from other provinces. But when we broke down that population boom, we learned more about who's arriving. These are estimates of the people moving to Nova Scotia since 2021. Statistics Canada tracks 3 major groups. Interprovincial migrants, that's people moving from other provinces. Immigrants, or people who've moved here from other countries and have their permanent residency status. And non-permanent residents, that's people who are here on a temporary work or study permit or who've claimed asylum in Canada. You'll notice for more than 2 years, there were many interprovincial migrants, but that's dropped a lot in the last year. For about a year,
There was a surge of non-permanent residents, international students and temporary workers. But that number has also dropped. That leaves international immigration. Over the last year, that's become the main source of our population growth.
Now you might ask, what if nobody moved to this province? What would happen then? Well, the population would be in decline. Statistics Canada's data shows every year for the past 8 years, there have been more deaths than births. That's part of our aging population. And this trend is not showing signs of changing. The province's recently re-elected PC government set a goal of reaching 2 million people by 2060. Premier Tim Houston called it a stretch goal, an effort to stimulate economic growth. Other leaders have said they have concerns about that target, saying they're worried about the strain on housing and healthcare. As these leaders make their decisions, their views are being shaped by a period of population change that we haven't seen for decades. Shayna Luck, CBC News, Halifax.
The provincial government is investigating after a data breach involving a third-party application called PowerSchool, which is used by many school boards in the province. The province says some staff and current and former students at the Cape Breton Victoria Regional Centre for Education had their data stolen. Halifax Regional Centre for Education says it has not been impacted by the breach. The company says it does not expect any of the data to be shared or made public.
The National Lacrosse League has handed a Halifax Thunderbirds player a 7-game suspension after video of a violent altercation between him and spectators. Fan video shows the Halifax team walking out after a loss in Denver towards their locker room as spectators jeered from the stands. In the video, a player identified as Tyson Bell is shown throwing a punch in the direction of a fan's head. He also swings his stick at another fan. The league says the actions were inexcusable. Bell was also cited for assault with bodily force by the Denver Police Department.
Well, you probably don't weigh the meat you buy, but you may start doing so after this story.
A CBC News investigation has found some customers are getting overcharged due to misweighed meat. Sophia Harris checked it out.
When Iris Griffin weighed the ground beef she bought in order to freeze individual portions, she says it was short, 134 grams.
I was angry. I was short by what was equivalent to an entire portion.
Griffin bought the beef at a Loblaw-owned superstore in Winnipeg. She figures the store overcharged her $1.27, an extra 8%, by including the plastic packaging when weighing and pricing the meat.
I'm being charged for this piece of plastic at the price of the ground beef.
Under federal rules, posted net weights on food labels can't include the packaging.
It is a violation of a mandatory federal regulation.
Griffin complained to the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, which alerted Loblaw. The grocer says, due to an error involved in a change in packaging, it sold a small number of underweighted meat products in 80 stores across Western Canada. The CFIA says it issued no fines because Loblaw fixed the problem.
Okay, and weighing the meats. 1 year later, CBC News went shopping and found several packages of underweighted meat at 2 Loblaw stores and 1 Sobeys owned location, plus this Walmart. It appeared the meats had been weighed with the packaging. Calculated overcharges per item were between 4 and 11%.
Doesn't surprise me at all that it's still a problem.
Retired CFIA inspector Terry Lee says when on the job, she often found underweighted meat in stores. She says both the CFIA and grocers need to do more to protect shoppers.
It's a hidden cost to consumers. The stores, they need to do more auditing. They need to get in there and they need to check their weights more often.
In an email, Loblaw apologized for its misweighed meat and said it has reviewed all weighted products for accuracy and refreshed in-store training. Sobeys and Walmart said they're addressing the issues CBC found with third-party partners which weighed the meat. This consumer advocate says even a small weight discrepancy can, over time, add up to big profits for grocers.
Potentially into millions and millions of dollars. So there's definitely a need here for some kind of rectification that consumers get compensated.
When asked, Loblaw said it will offer compensation. Sobeys and Walmart didn't respond. Sophia Harris, CBC News, Vancouver.
And there's a beautiful look at Halifax, downtown Halifax, through the lens of our harbor cam.
Sounds like there's going to be a few flurries in that shot soon.
Yes, well, to break it all down for us, that'll be Ryan. He's got his weather forecast coming up.
All right, let's talk weather now with Ryan Snoddon. And yeah, so many times during the show this time of year, we're talking about snow in the forecast.
Yes,
here we are again.
Snow lover's delight up in the Highlands.
Oh, yeah, they've got enough till June, I think, after this. Well, there's more tonight and more tomorrow. Yeah. And the Highlands itself may see another 15 or 20 centimeters tonight and tomorrow. Not nearly as much closer to the coast, but yeah, a lot of snow. And the wind is going to be relentless for everybody tomorrow, especially in the east. And that will lead to some higher than normal water levels with this relentless northerly flow along that north shore. So a heads up on that. We'll get to all of that. First, let's start with our current temperatures. And yes, you can see we're right around the freezing mark for most of the province right now. The winds, I mean, they've been persistent all week, but they'll be picking up in intensity tonight into tomorrow. And you can see right now, yeah, we're gusting upwards of 70 at Westport there in the Digby Neck, and also gusting to 50 in through Yarmouth. Most of the rest of the province, not too strong right now, but we will be looking at those winds picking up, as I said, especially into tomorrow. This is the latest round that we're watching, which is going to be moving through this evening into the overnight. A widespread trace to a couple of centimeters with this. Best chances for 2 to 5 centimeters will be across the northern areas of the province, and then 5 to 10 tonight possible in the Highlands. This is the low that's still directing our traffic, blocking high to the north, and that northerly flow, which is continuing to wrap in that moisture from the Labrador Sea. This is the system that we were thinking might be in the mix for us. This is bringing snow way to the U.S. South. Places that are not equipped to handle snow are getting snow, including northern Texas, and this will push across Alabama and the state of Georgia with snow over the next 24 hours. It will sail to our south, thankfully, as it moves out into the Atlantic. Okay, back home closer to our neck of the woods, and let's have a look at the overnight lows tonight, which will be right around the freezing mark. So that means the light snow and flurries will be mixed with some patchy freezing drizzle overnight tonight in through the north, and mixed with some showers in through the south. Those winds gusting to 50 through the overnight tonight, and you can see that mixing picking up here on the model. And as we move into tomorrow, we are going to be looking at temperatures again riding right around the freezing mark. Best chances for accumulation tomorrow throughout the day are going to be here and through the northeast and in through the Cape Breton Highlands. This is our best chance for tonight and tomorrow of seeing accumulations in that 5 to 10 centimeter range. And again, the Highlands, 15 may be even the lower end of where we see over the next 24 hours, 15 to 25 looking possible there. And this is South Mountain, and even in the metro area, we may see a coating to a couple of centimeters at the most. Now, special weather statements are in effect. I just mentioned with those driving northerly winds tomorrow, we're looking at elevated water levels, which may exceed astronomical high tide. And so a heads up on that over the next 24 as we are looking at those driving northerly winds. And have a look at Friday. You can see widespread gusts in the 50 to 60 kilometer per hour range, but here in through the North Shore and into Cape Breton, gusts 60 to 80 kilometers per hour. The winds will back off slowly, but surely overnight and into Saturday with a calmer day. So those winds sustain near 50, gusting 70 to 80 kilometers per hour for Cape Breton, Antigonish, and the eastern shore tomorrow. Gusts 60 to as much as 70, especially here through the Strait tomorrow, and maybe the coastal Atlantic coastline as well. But most areas here will gust to around 50 or 60 kilometers per hour. Similar story in the west, gusts to 70, perhaps Digby, Yarmouth. Most of the region here in the west going to be gusting 50 to 60. And you can see for Saturday, a calmer day. North to northeast winds, some sunny breaks in the mix, temperatures right around the freezing mark with that storm passing to our south. We will be looking at the clouds, I think, a little bit bullish both Saturday and again on Sunday, with the possibility of some flurries in the mix for Sunday as well. Temperatures, yeah, still right around the freezing mark, which is where we should be for this time of year. So these are seasonal type temperatures over the next 7. Keeping an eye on Tuesday into Wednesday for, again, another few bands of snow wrapping in from the northeast, but no major systems at least tracking through over the next 7, at least as of now.
That's right.
Famous last words.
Yes,
okay,
sir.
Thanks so much,
Okay,
Ryan.
thank you, Ryan.
Coming up, advocates are raising concerns about intimate partner violence in Nova Scotia. A coalition of advocates in Nova Scotia has written an open letter to the Houston government expressing concern about the escalating incidents of deadly violence against women in this province. Some of those incidents include the murders in Halifax on New Year's Eve and intimate partner deaths in Mahone Bay on Sunday. Anne St. Croix is the Executive Director of Transition House Association of Nova Scotia. Some of those members of that association are signatories to the letter. I want to talk to you about that letter in just a moment, but I think a lot of people have been upset about the large number of cases of intimate partner violence we are hearing about lately. But your numbers show the situation is worse than even what police are reporting. Can you explain that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. I think here at THANS and other community-based organizations in the province rely on indicators established by the Canadian Femicide Observatory, which is a national organization. And these indicators often identify and define femicide in more cases than police statistics reflect. And this is by considering a variety of factors. So, for example, whether the victim was known to her assailant. So for that reason, the number that we have here in Nova Scotia is slightly higher than what has been reported by the police.
Your number is showing 7 cases, I believe, in the last 4 months?
That's right, yes.
How do you begin to explain the increase we are seeing? How much of it relates to, let's say, the housing crisis, for example, where women are forced to stay in a situation because they can't afford to move, or any other issues that are out there now that maybe weren't there a few years ago even?
Yeah, I mean, as you've mentioned, IPV has long been a critical issue here in our society, and the recent events that have taken place in our province are deeply alarming, and I think show the profound and often fatal consequences of intimate partner violence. And I think it demands a renewed sense of urgency from all of us. So that would include government, community organizations, individuals, because I think it does truly take a whole of society approach. So that would mean looking at things, as you've mentioned, such as housing and making safe and accessible housing accessible and affordable for everyone, reducing poverty, all of these kind of social factors that can exacerbate violence in our society. So we need to tackle those issues and also tackle the root causes of violence as well.
Yeah, there can be lots of issues at play, I'm sure. The Houston government has acknowledged that the intimate partner violence that we're seeing is a problem, always has been, and they've been working to address it. It did adopt Bill 482, the Intimate Partner Violence Epidemic Act. How much action are you seeing in a province where the Mass Casualty Commission, for example, also highlighted the need for change?
Yeah, I think the bill passing was a significant step in the right direction, and we do commend the government for that. But I think without tangible action coming out of that legislation and coming out of the Mass Casualty Commission recommendations, they remain largely symbolic. So I think we need to start seeing more urgently things like sustainable core funding for those community-based organizations that are on the front lines, providing intervention and prevention support to survivors. We also need to see more, addressing those systemic inequities that increase vulnerability. So again, as I was saying, including poverty and the lack of mental health supports here in the province. And I will go back to housing. Housing is a huge one. So it can be a barrier to survivors feeling like they can leave an abusive relationship if they aren't sure where they'll be able to go, or if they'll have a roof over their heads if they were to leave. So I think, again, those recommendations are there. We have a pathway forward, and we now have the recognition that it is an epidemic, and we just need that action to follow up.
And so back to the letter, what has the reaction to the open letter to government been?
We have shared the letter with our communities and within our networks, and the folks who do this work and others are supportive. We have not heard from the government yet in response to that letter, but I think broadly what we're looking for is just more transparency and accountability on what government and other stakeholders are doing, and where that funding is being allocated, and how we can come together again as government and community and individuals to bring those recommendations forward. So we're hopeful that the government will respond.
And in the short term, what are the next steps? I gather you're hoping for a meeting with the Houston government, the Premier included?
Yeah, so our hope is to have a meeting so we can discuss, again, the urgency that we need to respond with here in Nova Scotia. I think it's really alarming that at the current rate, the femicides in our province could double by 2025. So last year, the Canadian Femicide Observatory recorded 7 femicides in our province. And at this trajectory, we will double that. And this is simply unacceptable. And we can't wait for another tragedy to act. So we need to act now.
Anne de St. Croix, good to get your thoughts on this today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And just a footnote to that interview, which was recorded earlier today. Late this afternoon, Becky Drouin, the Minister of Justice and Attorney General for Nova Scotia, says she will meet with the group, but did not say when, and that she did not know if Premier Houston would also attend.
Coming up, at least 5 people are dead as raging wildfires continue to burn out of control in Los Angeles.
And Joe Biden, Donald Trump, and other living presidents gather for the state funeral of Jimmy Carter. Welcome back. The two largest wildfires burning outside Los Angeles remain what officials call 0% contained.
One did stop spreading today, but conditions remain perilous, and city leaders describe the disaster as already historic. Steve Futterman reports.
With the Santa Ana winds less intense, fire crews went on the attack, going after the destructive fires both on the ground and from the air. Helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft spent the day dropping water and retardant on hotspots. On day 3, those who live in LA and surrounding areas were told the blunt reality of what they are facing. The recovery won't be easy.
Preliminary reports estimate the damage or destroyed structures to be in the thousands. It is safe to say that the Palisades fire is one of the most destructive natural disasters in the history of Los Angeles.
The Pacific Palisades area right here is probably the hardest hit. Just look at this, block after block, where homes once stood, basically nothing now exists. You may have heard about the gridlock that existed when people were trying to escape. There were so many people trying to leave that the road here, this is Sunset Boulevard, was just completely jammed. And as the fire approached, people simply abandoned their vehicles and left. These were burned, these others survived. Amidst the damage and destruction, 20 people have so far been arrested on suspicion of looting. Law enforcement officials say it will not be tolerated.
Our first choice isn't to do enforcement. It's not to make arrests. It's to help people. But if people choose to commit crimes, they're going to be held accountable.
And already there are people pointing fingers. LA Mayor Karen Bass being criticized by some for being in Ghana on Tuesday, attending the inauguration of that country's new leader.
When we are safe, when lives have been saved and homes have been saved, we will absolutely do an evaluation.
The fire crews may have tried to go on the offensive today, but the fires continue to burn and expand and destroy. While there was hope today for fire crews to try to get the upper hand, this brief respite in the winds may not last. The forecast calls for the winds to slightly increase over the next few days. Steve Futterman for CBC News, Pacific Palisades, California.
The body of former President Jimmy Carter is back in his hometown and final resting place of Plains, Georgia. A change of scene from earlier in the day in Washington, where some of the world's most powerful people gathered to say goodbye to the 39th U.S. president. Caroline Malone reports.
Tributes flowed in for former President Jimmy Carter on Thursday at a state funeral, the highest honour for the former leader who was known as much for his one-term presidency as for his humanitarian work. His grandson, Jason Carter, called him a man with vision who stuck to his principles and pushed for an end to racial discrimination and mass incarceration.
His political life and his presidency for me was not just ahead of its time, it was prophetic.
Among the hundreds of mourners in the Washington National Cathedral were all 5 living current and former US leaders. President-elect Donald Trump sat next to Presidents Barack Obama, George W. Bush and Bill Clinton, and President Joe Biden in one of his last major appearances before standing down.
Throughout his life, he showed us what it means to be a practitioner of good works and a good and faithful servant of God and of the people.
Also in attendance, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
Imagine all the people.
A rendition of John Lennon's Imagine by Garth Brooks before the coffin left the cathedral.
You may say I'm a dreamer.
The former president returns to his hometown of Plains, Georgia, for a final burial. Caroline Malone for CBC News, Washington.
Prime Minister Trudeau gave an interview to CNN after attending the funeral of Jimmy Carter, and he was asked what his #1 piece of advice for his successor would be when it comes to dealing with incoming President Donald Trump.
Understand that the win-win is what we need. Making sure that everyone understands that we do better when we work together, that yes, the American president has a capacity to hurt the Canadian economy. There's no question about that. But anything an American president does to hurt the Canadian economy will also hurt American consumers, American workers, and American growth.
Canada is giving an additional $440 million in military assistance to Ukraine. Minister of National Defense Bill Blair made the announcement today in Germany, where he met with allies to coordinate weapons support. Almost half of the amount he announced will go towards a Czech-led initiative to deliver large-caliber ammunition to Ukraine. Also at today's meeting, the allies discussed how the war might play out once Donald Trump returns to the White House this month.
It's clear that a new chapter starts for Europe and the entire world just 11 days from now, at a time when we have to cooperate even more, rely on one another even more, and achieve even greater results together.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin called on Trump to not abandon Ukraine. They said doing so would only lead to more chaos and war. Austin added that, quote, no responsible leader would let Russian President Vladimir Putin have his way. The meeting was attended by about 50 nations who first came together after Russia invaded Ukraine almost 3 years ago.
For the most part, newcomers say they are having a positive experience in Canada, but they also report facing unique challenges when it comes to housing. Alexander Silberman looks at this as a part of Welcome to Canada, a CBC News series about immigration told by the newcomers themselves.
Wow, they have visitor parking.
Vineet and Diksha Jain arrived in Saskatoon from India last year with high hopes for a better life and began searching for a home.
This looks like really spacious.
Yeah, it's spacious,
for now,
plus compact.
They saw rising rents, but being new to Canada was the biggest obstacle. With no credit history, references, or jobs, landlords kept saying no.
I was feeling like we should give up and maybe we should go back to our home country.
The long hunt for stable housing held up their path to getting settled in Canada and focusing on finding work in their fields. After 6 months of renting a room, they eventually found a place of their own.
There was always a tension back of our mind that we need to get into some good and bigger accommodation so that we can prioritize and plan our future.
The Gens are among many newcomers to Canada reporting challenges finding housing. In a survey conducted for CBC News, 8 in 10 newcomers say they've had a positive experience settling in Canada, but just more than half say they found a home that is affordable. The cost of rentals continues to grow across Canada, with most units still too expensive for the average renter. The country is rapidly building new apartments like these ones, and that's helping affordability with a record number of new rentals this year. But housing policy experts say construction is still lagging behind demand.
Supply just can't respond quickly enough.
This researcher says an influx of international students and temporary foreign workers created a rapid surge in demand for rentals.
People can get on a plane anywhere in the world this morning and arrive tonight. But we can't get a house on a production line this morning and have it ready for tonight. It takes us 5 or 6 years to get a housing built.
Others say it's a matter of too little housing and argue Canada can't afford to scale back immigration.
But simply saying that we're going to slow the population and therefore solve all of our problems, I think is actually very short-sighted and distracts us from the work that we need to do.
Welcome to our new home, Diksha.
The Gens are glad to finally have a place of their own, but they worry for other newcomers arriving in Canada and say some landlords and scammers are taking advantage of their situations. Alexander Silberman, CBC News, Regina.
The Association of Municipalities of Ontario has released a study examining the problem of homelessness in the province and the toll it takes on individuals, families, communities, and governments. Nicole Williams has more.
Living on the streets in Canada during the winter means being exposed to freezing temperatures, even when the consequences can be deadly.
I don't know what the answer is to why he died in the cold.
In the early hours of Monday morning, a man was found on the streets in medical distress in Ottawa in the frigid cold. First responders took him to hospital where he was pronounced dead. This woman, who lives near where the man died, says she would often see him and say hello.
Wherever he was just a part of the community and a fixture here. And to not have him here is heartbreaking.
We are at a real tipping point. Without concrete action, it is only going to get worse.
On Thursday, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario released a report detailing just how many people are living on the streets in the province. According to the study, 80,000 people across Ontario were known to be homeless last year, more than half chronically homeless, and those numbers have grown by more than 25% since 2022.
Let's understand that this is the floor, not the ceiling of the issue.
Officials say shelters are well over capacity, and municipalities are doing their best to support those struggling despite limited resources. But what's needed is more funding.
The reality is you're either going to pay for it now or we're going to pay for it later. And what we need, our provincial and federal, on some level, partnership is to make focused investments into the gaps that we know that exist.
Advocates say homelessness is an issue being felt acutely across Canada, a problem that can seem overwhelming, but one that is solvable.
The reality is that there are a number of communities who have actually found solutions to homelessness and have effectively ended homelessness, and those are especially proof points around the world.
The government of Ontario says it's already committed $3 billion over the next 3 years to combat homelessness, but cities across the province say they need $11 billion more over the next 10 years for prevention and housing, and $2 billion on top of that for supportive services. Nicole Williams, CBC News, Ottawa.
New research shows a dramatic increase in the number of children who are nearsighted and in need of glasses to see distances. Increased screen time may seem like the obvious reason, but there's more to the trend. Mike Crawley takes a closer look.
Keep watching that H. Let me know when it goes blurry, okay?
It's eye exam time for 8-year-old Aiden Chen.
I can't see.
Here at the Waterloo Eye Institute and at clinics like it around the world, optometrists are seeing the growing prevalence of myopia, or nearsightedness, among kids.
Myopia has actually increased dramatically during the periods of COVID, and if it continues on the trajectory, it will hit about 50% in 2050.
You might think the reason for this is perfectly clear: increased screen time, right? Turns out that's not the whole picture.
It's anything that we're doing up close, so it doesn't have to just be screens, it could be reading a book, everything like that.
Thank you.
The research shows a big predictor of childhood myopia is spending too much time indoors.
When we're outside, we're looking far away, so we're relaxing our eyes.
Studies have shown much less myopia among children who spend 2 hours per day outdoors.
It's believed to be related to the intensity of light. So outdoors, in sunshine or even on an overcast day, the lighting is much brighter than what we can do indoors.
Those 2 hours don't have to be consecutive.
Some studies suggest even making sure that the kids go out for recess is really important. And even walking to school.
Of course, outdoor time can take some extra effort during a Canadian winter. This outdoor education centre in Toronto welcomes kids year-round, a welcome break from the classroom.
It makes me feel tired and my eyes start hurting around here.
If you didn't finish coloring it the other day.
When kids are indoors, bright lighting helps.
Blink a few times and then I'll tell you when to hold open.
Canadian optometrists recommend children have at least one eye exam before they start school, then from age 6 onward, have their vision checked annually. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Waterloo, Ontario.
A dog in Ontario is being hailed as a hero for rescuing his owner after a nasty fall.
Jess Parker and her corgi Waldo were out for a walk when she slipped in the mud, breaking her leg. Thankfully, Waldo jumped into action. Have a look.
We're on a routine morning walk and I slipped. Instantly, I felt and heard a loud crack.
and I didn't have my phone on me. I looked at my leg and it was pretty gruesome. It truly was like my body was facing north, my foot was facing fully east, and my corgi Waldo jumps right into gear. He gave me a kiss on the cheek and he ran away, which is very out of character for him. Like, he's always by my side. And I see him in the distance tugging on a stranger's pant leg. Waldo starts barking and leading him toward me. Just as the stranger gets close enough, Waldo takes off in a different direction. And sure enough, Waldo comes around the corner moments later with our landlord and gave me another kiss on the cheek, almost to say, if like, I'm back, I brought help. The fact that Waldo was able to take action so quickly really made it sure that the situation didn't get any worse than it already was. And, you know, Waldo hasn't left my side. He's been with me this entire time since I've come home. So not only is he cute and smart, but he's a hero too. Thanks, buddy.
Waldo's amazing. Canada's main stock index edged higher as strength in base metal stocks helped outweigh weakness in telecoms and utilities. Stock markets in the U.S. were closed in observance of a national day of mourning for former President Jimmy Carter. Here's a look at the numbers as we head to break.
Hi, I'm Steve Sutherland in Sydney. If you want to know what's happening in Cape Breton Island or what's important to the people who live here, join me for Information Morning Cape Breton. News, views, interviews, live reports, reporters on the scene on matters of politics, art, community, current affairs. If it's being talked about in Cape Breton, we're talking about it on Information Morning. Every weekday morning from 6 to 8:37 on CBC Radio 1.
All right, well, as we saw earlier in the program, those pictures from the line crews in Cape Breton putting the power back on those spots, a lot of snow on those trees. Really pretty, actually.
Yes, it's very much a wintry scene in many parts of the province.
Yeah, although then we saw Kyle Moore in Sydney with the grass showing behind him. So it's unreal how different it can be across parts of the province. That'll be the case again for tomorrow. More snow in the north, not so much in the south, where we'll continue to see some mixing. First, let's have a look at our viewer picture of the day and have a look. This is going to be a nice shot here from Porter's Lake, and a big thank you to
pretty.
Kelly and Paul Eaglestone. Yeah.
It looks cold, though, doesn't it? You can kind of feel it from the picture.
Yeah, don't dip your toe in there.
No, definitely not. Although maybe if, the polar dip for January.
You guys go first.
Yeah, no thanks. As we look at the winds tomorrow, they are going to be the big one of the big factors. So northwest winds sustain near 40, gusting 50, 60, and 70 kilometers per hour for the east and central. For the west and central, rather. For the east, we're looking at winds that will be as strong as 80 kilometers per hour, particularly for Cape Breton and Antigonish County and into Pictou County. That's where there's a special weather statement in effect for some elevated water levels, particularly through Friday afternoon, for the potential for water levels exceeding astronomical high tide, or at least the potential for that. So Friday afternoon, heads up on that. Snowfall amounts over the next 24 hours. You can see it is the north and east yet again. And that little bullseye there over the Cape Breton Highlands, likely not even high enough in that we could see as much as 20 to 25 centimeters there. And this is all blowing in from the northeast with more rounds of moisture wrapping in around that low, which is finally going to move out for Saturday. Some lighter flurries on Sunday possible, but pretty quiet into next week.
Okay, we're okay with that.
Yep.
Well, Britain is renowned for historic sites, of course, but one is being unearthed near London that predates London by 166 million years.
Archaeologists have dinosaur tracks. The quarry was once a lagoon, and one day 2 dinosaurs walked through the mud. One was 6 meters tall, the other even larger.
How the tracks were preserved isn't clear. A storm may have dumped sediment on the site. 200 prints to stretch 150 meters with much of the excavation, and that long ago trek is still ahead.
Fascinating.
Lots of history there. That's it for us tonight. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Good night.
Good night.